In the name of God, who is love, beloved, and love overflowing. Amen. Okay, so I'm sorry, but I am of a certain age that when I hear the beginning of today's reading, I always think of the musical Godspell. I'm such a baby boomer. You are the light of the world. And I love the way they phrase it. But if that light's under a bushel, it's lost something kind of crucial. You gotta stay bright to be the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. But if it's lost its flavor, it ain't got much in its favor. You gotta have salt to be the salt of the world. I love that. It's amazing how that music is still good, you know. Same thing with Jesus Christ Superstar and all that. Yeah. Last week we heard Jesus speak to the crowds about the Beatitudes. I mean, I know that, I think it was Schuller who said the attitudes we ought to be. But that's sort of a snapshot, the Beatitudes, of God's values, which we're called to emulate. This week, Jesus begins with, you are the salt and you are the light. It feels as if Jesus is giving us a little self-affirmation for those days when we really need it. You are light and salt. Not you should be, not you should try to be, but you are light and salt. In other words, in God's eyes, despite everything you've heard from people who are so ready to condemn others, you have everything you need to heal from whatever harms you've suffered, and you're also strengthened to emulate Christ in this world and work for peace and justice. I think that's something we all need to be reminded of from time to time, especially during times when we feel so utterly powerless over the powers that be. As I'm sure I've mentioned before, one of my favorite sayings is, your greatest strength is your greatest weakness. We all know that if there's too much light, particularly sunlight, things dry out. I read somewhere that Peter O'Toole had to use eye drops when he was filming that movie Lawrence of Arabia because it was 120 degrees and the sun was always out. And so his eyes were just constantly burning and dried out. And I'm sure we've all had the experience of what salt can do to food. As the old saying goes, a little bit goes a long way. In both savory and sweet, some people don't know this, but to add a little salt even to your desserts brings out something amazing taste-wise. Gives a taste a boost, so to speak. And of course, on the other hand, adding too much salt can utterly destroy a dish. So your greatest strength may sometimes be your greatest weakness. So when it comes to celebrities and gurus and other folks we admire, it shouldn't surprise us that those same people can easily let us down, such as too much light or salt. As more information is released about who is named in the Epstein files, some folks may feel a little disillusioned. Some names didn't really surprise me, like Woody Allen and Kevin Spacey. But I have to admit I was surprised and a little disappointed that Deepak Chopra was even mentioned. It's not that I read a whole bunch of his books. I think I may have read one. But I knew about him for some time, way before he became a secular guru. Because I was good friends with somebody who was very deeply involved with the Transcendental Movement and Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And Deepak Chopra was right in there with all of them until he left. That's when he started building this whole secular, so to speak, fan club. So I expected a little bit more from Chopra. taking into account all the disillusionments of where we are today as a country, as opposed to where we thought we were heading back in the 60s, particularly after all the emphasis on love, I think there's many people in this country who are feeling a sense of betrayal and astonishment at not only who's been found in the Epstein files, but where we are politically as a nation. It makes us wonder about whether or not we can really trust anyone anymore if even the most spiritual people get caught in compromising positions. It makes us wonder if those we respect are really who they present themselves to be. I think many of us, and certainly many people outside of these walls, are looking for somebody to trust, someone to look up to model for us a life of honor. Because without them, I think it's easy to become cynical and even hopeless. And I'm afraid that's where a lot of our school children are at right now, cynical and hopeless. Going back to the gospel reading, I think it's interesting to notice that Jesus did not say, they are the light of the world. They are the salt of the earth. Jesus said, you are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. And I think that's an important distinction, because while having trustworthy role models is always important, it's vital to remember that every human being is frail. We all have faults, weaknesses, and attachments that cause us to suffer or cause others to suffer. Role models can certainly teach us many good things, but I think it's just so easy to slip into believing that they're in some way perfect, because at some point, their humanity, their frailties are going to slip out. It's happened with almost every idol we've ever put on a pedestal. They're only human. Many of you remember the time when it was revealed that Mother Teresa even had in her letters, had doubts. Who would have thought that? From time to time, she would bemoan the fact that she had not had a deep experience of God as she did on that train that initially called her to work with the poorest of the poor. And boy, did people jump on that. Oh, they were screaming, Mother Teresa never had any faith, Richard Dawkins and his group. Oh, she's a fraud. But nothing really could have been farther from the truth. She simply craved an experience of God different than knowing in her heart that the poorest of the poor were her experience of God. She knew that 100%. She knew that. She built her whole life on whatever you do to the least of my brothers and sisters, you're doing it to me. So she had no problem recognizing Christ in the people she ministered to. What she was disappointed in was that she wanted, for lack of a better term, a burning bush experience of God, because she had one on that train to Darjeeling, which was her initial call to ministry. Secular people don't understand that difference. And so they started claiming, oh, she's a fraud, she's a fraud. Not true. So when I ponder you and me being the light of the world and the salt of the earth, I think it's a great reminder that we too are also called to serve God in all the different particular and peculiar ways that God has called us. We're not all going to look like Mother Teresa. We're all not going to look like Deepak Chopra or any other guru that's out there. We are not called to perfection the same as any other person we mistakenly, frankly, put on a pedestal. I mean, right off the bat, when you put somebody on a pedestal, it's almost inevitable they're going to fall down at some point. They're human. I think it's kind of ironic, too, that people often say, oh, see, when Jesus flipped over the tables in the temple, see, he was human, too. Well, yeah, that doesn't mean he wasn't also fully divine, you know. We are very much the same. We can get very frustrated and have our moments where we act less than what we had hoped. We are simply called to do our best to reflect the light of God's love for all people, and specifically the most vulnerable in our society. This is what I call compassionate activism. That's what we're called to. You know, it's not our job to become perfect. That's God's job. And frankly, I don't think that's going to happen until I cross over. So I don't know about y'all, but it's not going to happen until I cross over. But we are called, imperfect as we are, to compassionate activism. Some days we're going to be called to simply shine the light of hope for others so they don't lose hope. And other times, we're going to be called to pour a little salt in the wounds of perpetrators of injustice by some form of activism, to call out and stand against the greedy, power-hungry, racist behavior of those who have political power at this time in our history. None of us are going to do that perfectly. We're simply called to do our part because, believe it or not, God has faith in us. Never ceases to amaze me, frankly. In spite of all our imperfections, and believe me, we'd be here a long time if I stood here and told you all my imperfections, past, present, and possibly future. We'd be here a long time. But in spite of that, God has faith in us. That should blow you away, because we're so used to hearing people scream at you about the wrath of God. Actually, God has a great deal of faith in us. You are light. You are salt. Whew, that's a good thing to remember. So my prayer for all of us is, may we be salt that heals, not overwhelms. Light that guides, not scorches, and a community that tells the truth about the human condition while still believing in transformation. I've often said, if the church is not in the transformation business, we may as well just pack it up and go home. There's no difference between us and any other civic group. We are called to transformation. Not just Jesus, you know, all of us, to make this world a more compassionate and fair, just plain old fair place to live. That's why we need prayer. You know, one step at a time. I will hold you all in prayer, and I have, for the moment I got here, every name on the prayer list and the whole congregation. We need as much strength from Christ as possible to be the salt and light that God already sees in us. I think that's good positive affirmation. Amen.